Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage. This is one of those cool moments where my garage is filled with awesome stuff. The old AZU, they are all old. The slightly less old Porsche 924 and the youngest of the three, my Autobianchi or Lancia A112 Abarth from 1985. If you're a purist about these, you're probably thinking that this is not supposed to exist because they stopped production of the Abarth in '89, but they made more for the Swedish market. So this is an '85, so it's the last hooray for the Abarth editions. This is a car that I really treasure. I owned this twice. I sold it once, bought it back, and now have owned it for quite a while, which it's not something that normally happens with me. I normally sell my cars within a year. But this one I owned in the first period a couple of years, I think, and then I sold it and it was gone a couple of years, and then it came back, and now I have owned it at least 2 years, maybe even more. I have done a lot of work to this car. I have learned so much stuff on this car. This is the first car I changed the head gasket on, for instance, using a piece of glass and sandpaper and all that. I changed the A-post because the doors fell off it. This car is a really rare car, especially in my country, but all over the world. But the special thing about this is that it has been in daily use for a lot of years. The previous owner before me used it as a daily. The owner before that also used it as a daily. And I myself used it as a daily to begin with. And I have also from time to time used it as a daily because it is extremely reliable for some reason, except the head gasket. But it turned out to be a slightly warped block, not cylinder head, but the block was slightly warped. I have fixed that now because I did an engine rebuild on this one where the block was skimmed. And ever since that, this has been extremely reliable. Currently, it's just my car that I use for joy rides, for fun rides. It's not the daily, but currently it's actually the only one of my fun cars that actually work. The family owns a daily car that I rarely drive, a Citroën C3. Nothing bad to be said about that, but nothing too exciting to be said either. But anyway, I drove this last week. Actually, already on the start of that journey, I noticed that the exhaust note has changed slightly, and I thought, it's got to be leaking from somewhere. But the leak became worse and worse and worse. At one point, I checked to make sure that the exhaust wouldn't just fall off the car in case that would happen. But it was secure in all the mounting places and so on. And then I drove over a bump, and the entire rear end of the exhaust fell off, making it completely straight piped. If you follow me on Instagram, there is a link down in the description. You would already know all this because I posted a little video about that when it happened. But it was a long drive home. It was kind of fun because it sounds awesome. It sounds like some kind of mad rally car right now. It pops and all that. And it's going to be a little bit weird to put a new exhaust on it because, of course, I don't want it to be as noisy as it is right now. The crackling sound only when it comes naturally, but I really like that sound, and that will most likely go away with the new exhaust. I was tempted to buy a performance exhaust that could maybe make the sound a little more audible and maybe even give it a little bit more power, but it is extremely expensive. We are talking 600 to 700 euros for the rear of the exhaust system. I was lucky to find the last one, it seems, of the cheap exhaust systems for this for around 200 euros. So that's all right to pay. I was starting to think if I should weld it up myself and all that, but it was just gone in so many of the joints, and who knows how bad it was inside those mufflers. So I have gotten a new exhaust. The conditions are currently horrible in my country. There's so much water. Maybe you can see lakes. I don't think you can see anything because of the mist. There's lakes all over the place, but they're not supposed to be. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of water on the roads, making this car feel very powerful because it will slide and spin its tires in the second and sometimes even third gear, which is not something that I'm used to with my cars. Here we go, a brand new exhaust with chrome tip is going on this car. So the car is jacked up because someone is using the lift and refuses to go down from it. So it's jacked up using some axle stands, and there is many of them. And there's even wheels on it still, so there is triple safety. So that's nice. But what I want to do is actually to remove that wheel. I know it's the exhaust that I'm going to change, but I also want to change the oil. And I noticed an oil leak that I think I can pinpoint from that area. It's funny with this car because, as mentioned, I owned it for so long and I really like it. And for a long time, this car wasn't really worth a lot. So it was perfect for me to use as a daily and to just enjoy. But it actually has begun to be quite valuable. Of course, mine is a worn out, not worn out, but it's not like new anymore, that's for sure. Oh, there's a lot of oil in this engine. But I am starting to think that I should maybe either take better care of this or think about the future of it. These are not the original wheels for it. And I love them, they look brilliant. But sometimes I wish I had the original ones because they are actually slightly too big, and especially in the rear, they can hit the wheel arches when you are driving in the car especially. That's a bit annoying. Also, I get some vibration at high speed that I think are related to these rims. I'm not sure, but I think. But they're just so cool looking. So let's see if we can find that oil leak, because I can see, apart from a loose connector, I think that's for the washer that is not working anyway. But it seems to be running down from right around there. At least this shaft is really washed clean of mud. Just gonna see if I can find it. I'm underneath the car now, and as you can see, this is washed in oil, and it's not from the oil change because that's down there. But I have a feeling that the leak is coming from the seal between this adapter for the oil filter. This adapter is because this got an oil cooler, so there are two lines going to the front of the car. But I think right there, you can see oil there, but I think it comes from that. I hope so, because otherwise it will come from the dipstick tube or from the head gasket. But I think this could be the cause. It could also be because of excessive crankcase pressure, of course. But I'm going to take off the oil filter and see if it's tight enough. And then I'm going to start the engine up with new oil in and then check this area. But not before the exhaust is changed because it's so noisy. As mentioned, I'm going to change the exhaust, but not this pipe because I couldn't find that anywhere. And it is a little bit worrying looking. But hopefully it will last for a while. There we go. Now that I see this, I'm pretty sure I repaired this part of it once before. It could look like a seaside garage thing. So this is the old exhaust. Like so. Just going to put the new one up next to it to see how different it is. Sometimes it's very different, sometimes it's very similar. I can see already now that the new one is longer than the old one, so maybe I don't have to fix anything because I think it will just overlap the broken area. Nope, it won't. It's exactly the same. So I do need to fix a part of this pipe. Okay, so the problem I'm having right now is that this part of the pipe that is currently stuck inside of here and goes up to the actual manifold of the exhaust on the engine, I thought was all right. And to be honest, it could be used, but there is a hole right here that I would have to weld up. And yeah, I could always do that, but what I'm going to try is to bend another piece of pipe to use. And this is the pipe that I found to be the closest match. I could go smaller and weld it inside of it, but I don't want to make the internal diameter smaller because it is the breathing of the engine we're talking about. And even though it's maybe just a millimeter, I just don't want to do it. But what I want to try to do is to replicate this pipe. That means this bend and the bend up here. This one I actually think I made that when I rebuilt the engine. The end of it had corroded off, so I welded a piece of pipe on. But I need to make that bend also. Firstly, I'm just gonna take this pipe apart. If there is a hell on earth, I think it would be a place where you have to disassemble rusty exhaust, because that is annoying. So now that I look at this pipe, this is way better than expected. It's just this part of it that is very thin, but the rest of it is pretty decent actually. So it's also a possibility to just fix this, but I'm gonna attempt to bend a pipe into shape. So the first thing I want to do is this one. So like this, and then I'm just gonna bend it until it looks about right. Ah. If I were to bend it more than this, I would probably fill it with sand. You can get some springs to put inside the pipe that I don't have, unfortunately. It would be a cool thing to have. But I think while the bends are not very tight, that it won't collapse too much, at least. That looks decent. Then it's the bend back here. It's right around there. The actual direction is about there. I'd say, hope it's in the ballpark at least. I'm just gonna tighten up the radius a bit by moving this in. Let's just check how it is now. Yeah, that's not far off. Just gonna give it one because it always go a little bit back when the tension is released. So I'd say this is not bad. It's pretty right. So I'm just gonna mark it up so I can cut it. There we go. So that made this pipe become this pipe. This is the pipe. It goes on through here, and it gets snug up around here, but this area is a bit loose. Maybe 1 millimeter or something like that. But I think it will work. So now I'm gonna install the exhaust and then clamp it tight together up front. But firstly, I will install the rear box. I just did a bit of adjustment to it, and now I think it sits way better. Next up, I want to change that oil. And as mentioned, I had an oil leak, but now that I look at it up here, it seems to be coming from way higher. I was expecting the seal between that area down there, the aluminum block between the oil filter and the block. But it actually looks like it's coming all the way up from up here, which is either the distributor seal thingy or the actual valve cover gasket. It really could be that. So I am getting ready to install the new oil filter. I'm just going to lube up the oil seal, of course. And then I'm just going to mention that for this car in particular, that I have had some issues with the oil filters on this car before, and maybe this will help others with the same car. If you just go ahead and order an oil filter off the generic sites using the number plate or the VIN plate or the VIN number from the car, you risk getting oil filters without a non-return valve. I have ordered several oil filters that did not have that or was out of specs. I ended up finding MAN filters W740/2, and that is very good. If you install the wrong ones, at least on mine, it means you will have no oil pressure for around 1.5 seconds more than normal when you start the car up. You can physically see the oil lamp being on while the engine is running a couple of seconds. I think that will wear the engine quite a lot, so I don't like that. These engines needs that non-return valve. And the problem is that the oil would drain back into the sump if the valve is not there or not working. And that means when you start the car up, it will use the pressure to fill the oil filter. And you want the pressure to fill the bearings and so on. So now I'm going to lower the car down on all four and fill it with oil. So the oil is changed. Let's try to fire it up, and hopefully it sounds a little more decent. Just building the oil pressure before I'm giving it any throttle. There we go, oil pressure. And then give it some throttle. Yep, it sounds leak-free. And I found the oil leak. Take a look at this area when I rev it. That's the oil leak. It's coming from the distributor. So either the O-ring or the seal down there. I'll have to fix that another day. I don't have any more time today, unfortunately. Now it's found. It just needs to be fixed. That's nice. This will be all for this video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.